I am unashamed. What about you?
So, Dad, we're back. We're back home. Did you have any other interesting things happen this week in your summer, Phil, when you were home alone?
Home alone. Your mother said, "Did you take a bath while I was gone?" And I said, "No, I never got around to it." She said, "I smell BO." I said, "Yeah, I need to get a bath, I guess."
So, Mom is your bath reminder as well as
Did you
everything.
get a bath this week? Nah.
Well, why would you bathe? Nobody's there. It's just you and the dogs, right?
Me and the dogs. Well, if it's just you and the dogs, you'll end up smelling like a dog.
I think now I know why Dad likes to be alone, and for all of us to leave, he can just be himself, sit around.
I go dark. In other words, I look at all this electricity. They keep them lights and women just one end to the other. I go around, I turn out. The first thing I did, they all left and said, "We're going to vacation." I just went around and turned out all the lights. So I'm basically just sitting there. I didn't watch Fox News for about a year and a
Kind of
half.
disturbing and sad all at the same time.
Yeah,
No baths and just, I was actually home alone last
just
night.
armed, and I'm sitting in the dark, and I've got my Bible with me here. So I've got my weapons.
You had your
Weapons,
spiritual
the
weapons,
Bible.
your physical weapons.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was watching
Physical
that,
and
so I'm watching the LSU game last night. The LSU baseball.
What an amazing double
man.
comeback! I mean, this.
I'm not sure when this will be released.
Yeah, we're kind of recording in crazy times here, so.
But so they won. They beat Kennesaw State, somebody I had never heard of, who had a pretty good team, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's nothing that's really happened officially, but so they won. They were down 11-4 in the
Eighth inning, yeah.
Final score 14-11. So then the next night, which was last night, because I came home from the beach, but Missy, we got one graduated, which was Karina. We had a little party at the beach, which was
This
really,
turned out really nice, didn't it?
There was a lot of graduations going on.
well, we had 6
Yeah, we had 6
that we-
graduates at our
that
party
we celebrated
in the
That's what I'm
family.
saying.
Yeah.
on the beach.
Yeah, somebody gave me an update on the graduation ceremonies, and they said everybody graduated down in
We
here.
said a few words. Missy,
Your daughter, I mean, she's excelled the Latino girl
Nicaraguan,
in
Same thing.
Nicaragua,
yeah,
but she's a brain, isn't she?
yeah, she's done.
She's going to be working in
fantastic.
D.C., I
I
understand.
take no credit for that. I
That's
mean,
awesome.
we were just a small part. The Lord and her had an arrangement years ago, and she's very inspirational.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for those-
How long has she been there with you? You and
She's been with us about 6 years.
oh, was it that long?
Yeah.
Ooh, I was
So-
thinking a couple of years.
Time flies. So anyway, I'm watching the game because Missy is now, Mia has what do you call it when you orientation at her college
Yeah.
where she's going. So she got a scholarship. So we're excited.
Oh, that's
So-
where is she
Mia,
going?
she's in Nashville,
Yeah.
and so I'm there, and we had already won that game before, and I thought, yeah, they're gonna be down, and so we were playing Southern Miss, and they
Who's
were
hosting the regional? They've
Yeah,
got a really
and
good
they're
team.
good.
Yeah.
They're good. Their pitching staff looked like a major league baseball team. So I was like, I mean, every time this guy they had starting, I mean, it was just ridiculous.
They had like 11 strikeouts.
Oh, yeah. So we're down 6-2. They bring in some guy throwing 98, Well, then they bring in, then they're like, well, now here comes the closer. I'm like, oh, that guy wasn't the closer? It's just getting worse. So it gets to be 2 outs, and you're like, yep, but I was
And look,
thinking,
it's 2 outs, nobody on.
yeah, 2
You're
outs.
down 4.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, I feel good about next year because I was thinking about who we had coming back. Because the night before, I thought, look, we could come back and win this, and we did. But I'm like, all right, it's 6-2. This team's rested. They got good pitching staff. They're 11th ranked in the nation. We ain't coming back. So Cruz let it off. He hit a home run. Then the next guy, who was batting?
Pearson.
2-0.
Wasn't it?
I think he was batting in the 3-0. Barry. I think Barry got out. So I think it was 1 out.
So now they're down 3
Well,
with
it was
1 out.
6-3. But anyway, Pearson, who's from our hometown.
Yeah, he's from Western Monroe. He's a really good player.
So he gets a hit. Well, then the next guy, that Cade Doty, he's down to his last strike and barely ticked a couple balls. There's 2 outs. And he throws him outside fastball. Gone. Home run. So now it's 6-5. But you're like, but still it's 2 out.
Right, 2 outs.
You're that close. So then the next guy, the first baseman, he phantomly gets hit by a pitch.
Yeah.
It was kind of like he threw the pitch, like, oh, my arm, So he goes down to first. They review it, you can't tell. So now he's on first. They put a pinch runner in for him because he's got a knee problem. The pinch runner on a ball in the dirt, take old Bianco, he gets second. Well, now he's in scoring position. Well, the shortstop, he's up, base hit up the middle, tie game. Well, at that moment, I woke the neighborhood. But I was, to y'all's
I heard
point,
a loud cheer.
looking around for somebody to tell.
Nobody's
And I
there.
got 2 dogs looking at me just with fear in their face because I'm hollering,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, don't ever.
They're looking toward the doors.
This is why you don't quit. You don't give up. I was literally
What's the coach is saying? There's no clock in baseball. That's what.
no clock, but I was ranting and raving to no one, and I thought it kind of hit me in that moment. I thought, there's no one here. Why am I acting like this? Because I was just going back and forth saying, I'm telling you, when you get down, you don't quit. It's not over.
You were just
talking
telling
to
yourself.
So then I broke my 4-year, silence. I did before another LSU game. I was like, I gotta have some. I was wanting someone, so I went to Twitter and put, what did I put? I put something like, this team doesn't give up, and I love it or whatever. So
Which you
sent
broke
that.
the rule. You never do that before the game is over, but still, you were just.
You just
excited.
had
Well,
to
I did
tell,
it
you had
before
to-
the game
you had
was
to
over.
tell somebody about what a.
Yeah, I did it before the game was over because we hadn't won yet. But I didn't care at that point because I thought if you're down 6-2, even if you lose this game, but I didn't put all that. I just said, this is why you don't give up. This team doesn't give up. So then we bring in our closer, 3 up, 3 down. And so then in the bottom of the 10th, we just got first guy got on, then a walk. But it turned out bases loaded. They brought everybody in, and they got the first out, ground ball, a play at the plate. But the second one was the guy from West Monroe, our hometown.
Yeah.
Hit a high chopper. And by the time he caught it, threw it home. Up, he's safe. Ball game over. And then they just mayhem ensued. It was awesome.
Well, and let me just say, for the sake of not knowing when this is going to air, the whole thing will be over by the time this probably comes out, and we may have lose. But it's still,
our
look,
team is not. Look,
it's not that great.
Most time,
It's poor defense and not great pitching.
You know what they say when people say like about football? They're like defense wins championships. In baseball, they say pitching and defense. Well, that's our 2 weakest categories.
We can hit.
Yeah, we're just not. We're one of the worst defensive teams.
Yeah,
and our pitching. Look, I love those guys. I mean, I follow them, but we're that team last night. Way better. They're way better pitchers. The radar gun doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And they have way better control. Now, having said that, I just watched 2 games that you would never think in your wildest dreams that we were fixed to win that second game.
Well, the star of that game, I didn't watch the game, but the star of that game had to be whoever shut them down because they were up 6-2 earlier. So
they were up 5-2.
Somebody must have really pitched great the last 3 or 4
Well,
innings.
they just kind of patched it up.
Yeah.
And, it was 5-2. Then we gave up a run I think the 8th made it 6-2. So you're like, well.
I was actually watching the Tennessee game, and by the way, I've gotten some texts and tweets from Tennessee fans. I mean, their team is awesome this year. I mean, they're unbelievably good. So
something is happening in the college baseball where they're they're more celebratory than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, like LSU, they had a boom box every time they scored a run, and
Tennessee they put a coat over
the fur coat, and I was like, whatever happened to Phil's old line that he got from the famous coach that said, you need to act like you've been here before.
That's right.
But I do think that's a sign that we're getting old, I guess.
I guess so.
It's fun. I mean, baseball can be boring, and so I think somebody said, let's do something to liven it up. It's okay.
That kid, one of I guess he's a right fielder for Tennessee. He had a go-ahead home run fairly late last night, and man, there's been bat flips before that were impressive, but that kid has a bat flip now.
Well, I think people like us like it because when we used to play, inter league fast pitch softball,
right?
That's what we were doing. I'd hit a home run. Oh, it's a bat flip, and knowing the next guy up
is going to get drilled.
But it's a softball. We're playing softball.
The league was still playing back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s because if you ever showed the guy up, he was going to bean the next guy.
I always wondered what 50-year-olds do. I guess y'all have got a pretty good avenue. At least it's clean and decent.
That's what I've said. Exactly right. I mean, look, if you look at it from a spiritual lens, because I mean we're in Colossians 3 and 4, but that Colossians 3 is famous, where it's like set your mind on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. I mean, you can see that in that situation, these qualities that the world and worldly activities that are good, clean fun. I mean, baseball is a good, clean, fun game. You see them borrowed and stuff like that, where you don't quit, you persevere. Doesn't matter what for. They're inspirational. Just seeing that everybody counts. A team sport. Even you compare it to the church, where they say the next man up, or they have all these sayings, but you see a lot of that. They get it from the idea, I think, of spiritual things, because that's really what it's about. I mean, they train all year. You say, yeah, the best athletes are going to win. Not necessarily. I mean, we got some stud hitters, but just as far as pitching and defense, I mean, what are we doing?
Well, baseball, I feel like it's a bad rap because a lot of people don't like baseball because they, compare it to football or whatever. It's slower paced, but it builds. But I personally like that. I mean, I like the fact that every game is like an artwork, and you don't know exactly how it's going to go.
Well, it's better if you're watching it with somebody, though, because it can be slow and drawn out.
It is, but I find that I do other things during that or flip around.
Yeah.
Which, but it's a good sport.
I'm not even sure why I was telling that, but
because it just happened.
Yeah. Well, I was by myself. I guess I was saying it because of that. Celebrations are better when you're with somebody. You know?
Yeah, high-fiving yourself just doesn't quite.
I finally just thought, y'all dogs aren't listening. So then if I start howling, they'll start howling. And I was like, well, that's what we're doing. If we win this game, I said, we're howling. And so when we got the game-winning hit, I just started howling, and both my dogs were just,
it was the only way you could engage. You should have filmed that. That would have been hilarious. Let's take our first break. So, Jase, we just got back from vacation. So, how did you sleep down there? Good or bad?
I mean, it was okay, but when I got back, I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up, and my back is stiff.
Yep. See, if you had only gone to your bed and slept on your Helix sleep mattress.
I have one.
I know.
I just
and you didn't use it.
I didn't make it to the bed.
One of the things, I wish I could take my Helix with me when I go on vacation, because you can't tell about vacation houses or hotels what you're going to get. But we use Helix Sleep, a great mattress. Jason and I both have them. We took it, and we're getting you one, Dad, by the way, because you still haven't gotten one. But we love it, and the reason we do is because it's so comfortable. You go on their website, which is helixsleep.com, and you're going to take a quiz that we both took. And in that quiz, just takes you a couple of minutes. They're going to find out what kind of mattress you like and fits you. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out free for 100 nights, risk-free. It's 100 nights. That's almost a third of a year. And they'll pick it up if you don't love it, but you will. So go to helixsleep.com/unashamed. You're going to get $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our Unashamed listeners. So that's a good deal. helixsleep.com/unashamed, $200 off, 2 free pillows.
Yep, send me one of them.
It's coming. Well, that's funny. It was both of y'all were home alone, so I guess that's the deal. Dad didn't bathe; you were howling to the moon. So
Yeah, we got issues.
which is you do.
So we're wrapping up Colossians on the next 2 podcasts.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So how have you decided we're going to do that?
Well, we're kind of at the end here. I thought last week we were a little disjointed because you and Zach and I were coming from Gulf Shores. Dad was here, but we kind of talked about toward the end this idea about it shifts into family, which we covered quite a bit on the last podcast. We talked about husbands and wives and their relationship, and then we talked about children and parenthood, and kind of he lays out this idea that the home is sort of your structure to face everything outside, and which makes sense. I mean, think about it. You have to have some place of security, as you kind of go forward in this world. And I think that's part of, as we discussed, some of our cultural issues is that there's been a grievous attack by the evil one to attack families and to attack, parents and against children, children against parents. I mean, any discord he can sow in these areas, that's what he does. And when that happens, you see things break down. And so, I mean, it's no guesswork. It's evidence. And I don't know, these people that are pushing for non-nuclear families in America, the results are.
What is that?
That there's no patriarch. You don't have a husband and a wife, and you don't set up this. They call it a archaic structure, and it's not just men and women. It can be this, that, and the other, and they come up with.
People are reading the Bible and saying, "Let's just do the exact opposite."
I think that's exactly what it is, and it's because they don't. It's since they don't know anything about God. It's Romans 1. They don't know Him, and so they're like, well, why would we put ourselves in this? They're seeing it from their perspective as some kind of bound structure that, we all have to behave. But you're like, but if you go your route, we see the results. It's not good.
Well, you don't have an identity.
You got to remember,
It's just chaos.
Under the law of Moses, I mean, it's kind of interesting to look. And you can read also about what love does for you instead of breaking the law. We're not under law, but the fifth command, children, honor your father and mother. Well, when he gets to Colossians, and when you've had your sinful nature cut away and you're under grace, it still says, wives, submit to your husband, the husband to their wife, children, obey your parents in everything.
For this pleases the Lord.
Yeah, and that's the sixth command. It says, children, honor your father and mother. So when you read, when you're under grace, you're not under law, your sinful nature has been cut away. Those principles, do not murder, do not lie, do not steal. Keep your family structure intact.
It's the best way to live.
It's the best way to live.
And then I think
you don't die if you make a mistake at it. In the law of Moses, I mean, it was strict on what you could and could not do. So you look at the same principles. It's like the Apostle Paul said, the law is not the problem.
Right.
I mean, we're the problem.
And that's why I think
Romans 7, I read it a couple of times there, a week or two ago.
Right.
But, when you start using, well, you just forget that. Well, you don't forget the law of Moses. it's the greatest code of conduct that ever was put out.
Yeah.
It's like all these shootings, people wringing their hands, and you say, that we already have a lot of laws that cover all that. You know, children, honor your father and mother, do not murder, do not steal, do not lie. I mean, the laws are still there, Al.
Yeah.
They're 4,000 years old.
Yeah.
But because of no one ever kept the law perfectly, Jesus comes along and cancels it, but it's not like those principles are not good principles.
But you remember, Dad, you remember what the founders said? They said, without religion, the people won't self-govern.
That's right.
And when you won't self-govern, there's no possible way the government can possibly govern all these people
That's right.
by law. And they were right.
Yep.
And that's what we're seeing now. They try to do more. I do think it's interesting, Dad, that you talked about honoring your father and mother, and then Paul in verse 21 of chapter 3 shows you how to make that happen. Do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. So it's as much as
You can overdo it.
You can overdo it, and I think that's been done. I mean, let's
I think
face
there's
it.
a lot of things you can do to embitter
Yeah,
children. I mean, not just overdoing what. I mean, like
It's
discipline.
more of a lifestyle than rule-oriented.
Right.
Just you know,
Well, and look, I mean, I guess everybody looks to their own situation because that's all you know. But I've said this before, Dad. You were low on rules, but you were high on discipline. In other words, you didn't get into every little thing and constantly on our back. You just said there's a few things you got to get right, or there'll be discipline, and there was. But I personally, the way I was raised, I mean, I thought was you did it the right way. I'm not embittered. I wouldn't be sitting at this table, obviously, if I would have been embittered by your
I gave
discipline.
y'all a little speech and we sat at the table in there one night. I was sometime with another. I just remember telling y'all sitting there around the table, you'll have every once in a while you'll have a great teacher. You'll have teachers that are all right,
Yeah.
and then you'll have poor teachers. I said, here's the deal. You got to obey them all. I said, you can't
remember.
say, well, she's not a good teacher, so I'm not going to pay any attention. I said, just obey her, and you get out of there, and you get out of that class. And
yeah, I remember when you said that, and I was thinking, I don't know if I agree with that.
yeah,
That's what I thought.
Jace was the one that got in a few battles with
Exactly.
the teachers.
Well, Jace was.
My
It's funny. I was the
overall-
most rebellious in
My
terms of
overall point
lifestyle.
is they're
Jace was
part
in
of the
general.
structure,
Yeah.
and it's best instead of arguing.
Well-
so some teacher just say yes, ma'am, and let it ride.
But I was.
They're going to win.
I
in
was
the
a
end.
Well, you were
real-
teaching us that authority is going to be in your life.
And you were right, and I think there's something to be said here that we can talk about in this section because I was a real shy kid. Y'all remember that?
Yep.
One thing I couldn't be shy about is if I thought a teacher was being nonsensical
Right.
or just dead wrong. I'd raise my hand because I was under the delusion that we had the right to free speech back at an early age. No,
No.
you can't
That's
ask
why I
a
gave you my little speech about you don't ever get crossways with them because even if they're a poor teacher, I said your best route is just yes, ma'am.
There's no free speech in the
Suck it up.
classroom.
No, I wasn't, because the fact that I was portraying a contrary view, I mean, it didn't matter. She wasn't open. Just like, I'm not answering
It's
that.
like right
Didn't they expel you one time for about 3 days? You had a fight with somebody.
suspended or something.
Yeah, expel is a strong word.
You were
I was
suspended.
suspended a few times.
Suspended,
For
yeah,
various
yeah.
things.
But if you get suspended
days
enough,
suspended.
then they expel you. That's what
You
happened.
know what? I wasn't like, wasn't it?
I forgot about this. That Jace was you were a rebellious
I was rebellious.
student.
But I wasn't like into drugs or drink. I never
Yeah.
did
Why
any
he
of
said
that.
a while ago when I gave him the format on just obey them and move out, Jay said, when he heard that, I don't know.
about all that.
Yeah, well, he got in a little bind there.
Well, I would challenge the teachers, or I would ask for clarification, and they usually just
Said shut
Yeah.
up.
because I said so. That's what.
Yeah.
That's what you. If you don't put that down, you'll get it wrong.
Poor teachers. You have poor ones. Yep.
That
Some.
and I'm
So-so.
saying I had a couple. that
Yep.
I had a biology teacher that was just. I thought, no, this is spiritual warfare. because she was just anti-God. And, I mean, I just thought it was ridiculous. And anybody that asked anything, there was no conversation.
Yeah.
It was just, it was a public school. She was mad at God.
Yeah.
And it was trickling down to her students.
Yeah.
Because she was teaching biology, and we don't believe in God.
These days, it's a lot worse than when you went. These days, it's rampant. No God.
But now, look, having said that, I did some substitute teaching. Did you know that, Al?
I did not know that.
I did. And so no matter what I did, no matter what the subject was, I would just share the gospel. Well, guess what? You got chastised for that.
Yeah. Now they would just be horrified.
Oh,
At a guy like
well, they
you.
were pretty horrified when I did it first time. When I lead a prayer, at a public school, I had all those students.
Were you at West Monroe? You were at the high school?
I actually, and look, here's what's funny. I didn't even graduate college. So here was
You didn't even go to. You went like to
I went to
two classes.
but I had that 2-year degree from the seminary.
Daddy
So-
couldn't pass health and golf.
Well, somebody asked me if I wanted to substitute something. What I noticed about substitute teaching is once you're in, you're in. And then finally, when they
Well,
got
yeah, because they're just looking for warm bodies.
right.
Let's face
And
it.
when they finally got to looking at my credentials and found only a 2-year degree from a seminary, they said, "Well, no wonder he's sharing Jesus to the class."
That's all he knows.
That's what his credentials are. So, but you know what? I didn't care. And
Now the powers that be would be, I don't know about in Louisiana, uptown, up there in the schools. I don't know whether they're on this left-wing woke mess or what.
I'm sure
well,
there's
that was
a
years
few.
ago, and
I'm sure
that
there's
they were
some.
on it then. I mean, because they were horrified that I would come in there and do that. But I know a lot of. I was showing in love a care and concern for young people. I mean, look, these public schools are so big and so crowded, and a lot of the teenagers are dazed and confused, trying to find their identity, which is why we have all this garbage out there already about you don't even know.
But
who
I'm
you
willing
are.
to. I'm willing to bet. Let's take a break.
All right, we're getting close to the Duck Family Treasure airing. And a little birdie told me that if you're a Fox Nation
Subscriber.
yeah, I didn't know what they call it these days, then on June 10th, you can actually see the first sneak peek episode.
Really?
Which the first episode is kind of like why we're doing this. And it explains what we're doing.
I've actually seen the first episode, and I thought it was
What was your
really.
take?
I thought it was really, really good.
Okay.
It reminded me a lot of our little duck show, and some elements to it. But then again, it's unique and different. I thought it was really
I
good.
mean, I just think in our culture, it's a rarity to get some good family fun adventure that you can watch with the entire family.
Right. Well, look, I am subscribed to BlazeTV.com. That's obviously our parent company. I also am a subscriber to Fox Nation because there's really good content on there. It's going to get better now that some of our stuff's going to be on there. So I want to encourage people to do that. Sign up, check it out.
Let me know what you think.
I'm willing to bet, Dad, that across the board, if you went across America, no matter what the situation is, and we see the worst of it on the news, but most teachers are dedicated. They love students. They love their job. They're there for them. I mean, I guarantee you most teachers are good people. Most.
I agree.
I mean,
I just think it's a few.
And look, it's a pretty unsung career because you don't make a ton of money and you're dealing with kids, 9, 10 months a year.
Y'all are in North Louisiana where it's still vestiges of spirituality is here. So a Bible reader, so it's more prevalent here than it would be if you went to some other states.
Well, I've always encouraged. Look, our kids went to Christian school, and you used to teach at a Christian school before you got into duck calls. But I always encourage Christians to be in public school because you're the line of defense as a believer with a lot of these kids. So I mean, it's important that you're there. And look,
That's
you
why
can't
I
be
went.
as bold as Jace was without probably being kicked out, but
Well,
you
I
can
thought
still
the
be
worst thing
subtle.
that happened, I wanted to see what would happen. What are you going to take me to
There's
jail?
more backlash toward the powers that be. This current crowd right now. There's more backlash than I've seen. They're rising up across the country and saying no.
But the
Just
point
trying to
is,
push
but
it
the
in,
point
that's right.
is, a substitute teacher. What I learned from that process, because I did it for 2 or 3 years there, they just are looking for a babysitter. They don't want you to say anything
Right.
because you're not going to teach whatever they're supposed
Because
to.
you don't really even know. You're just
No,
showing
there's
up.
nobody calling
You're
you.
just an adult in the
saying-
room.
That's all they wanted. So I'm like, why not try to give them some inspiration? Yeah, and y'all know me. I wasn't like badgering or manipulating. I was like, here's what I'm into. That's the way I started.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm into if you want to join me. I
Yeah.
just went through the
And
whole
look, you've had a long record from when you were 14 on the person who called you on the phone. You've been telling that story.
And look, I did it without a Bible. So I didn't like turn over to,
Yeah.
I just quoted it all from memory.
How did the students react? What was
They
their?
listened. They laughed. They, I was.
Because it was
sharing
different.
Jesus.
Usually they just have somebody sitting up there reading the paper, but you were just like
I
engaged.
mean, I made fun of a few things that they learned in biology, and
Yeah.
I had my little jokes. I'm still doing in my speeches today. Same ones. I'm like, y'all got a better idea? How'd the chicken get here? I'd ask that. I've been asking that since high school.
They probably went home and told their parents, and their parents were thrilled. They were like, well, finally,
Sure, a
somebody's.
lot of them were.
Probably so.
But then, when it got to the rulers and authorities, they were not as happy.
You were suspended yet again.
But the times I was suspended but I tried to look for loopholes in the system, mainly centered around absence, missing days. That's
Yeah.
what I mainly got in trouble for.
Yeah. Well, Dad's thing to us was, it's a grind, boys. But you got to go. You got to get your education. But I don't care if whatever time they'll let you take. I don't care if you take every bit of it, and we always did.
But see, picture days, you'd all meet somewhere, but I noticed they wouldn't keep, because who would miss their pictures?
Us.
I noticed every year there was 2 or 3 that said photo not available.
Yeah,
and I
it was a
said,
little person with a barrel around. Remember the picture?
so I
of the-
thought, I'm just going to not show up that day and see if it's counted as an absent. So, of course, I wasn't in the yearbook that year. I didn't care. I got the trade-off for missing a day. Well, they didn't count it as an absent day.
Really?
No. So guess what?
You never did another one.
Never did another. You cannot find me in high school. I'm in no yearbook. It's always it just says photo not available. You can find no
You
record.
don't even exist in that.
Because it was
arena.
a free day that
Yeah.
they didn't, for some reason, they got a glitch in the system.
So I don't know, Jace, when you were, because you weren't too far behind me at West Monroe, but to show you how things were just not that long ago. I mean, I guess it has been a long time, but we had they called it the smoking ring. So when everybody was outside and you had like
Yeah.
a break,
They had it.
there was
when
a smoking section for
you
the
could-
students.
As a teenager, you could smoke cigarettes.
it was called
at
a
high school.
In
yeah.
the 60s, we had that, and they called it the cancer pit.
Oh, that's
Cancer
pretty
pit.
good.
Where they got a fight coming between a couple of them going to fight down out. Where are we going? Where are they going to fight? They said, well, they got one of the coaches, and he'll be down there refereeing it. But we got a couple of guys. They've been at each other for the last month.
Meet them at the cancer pit.
Go to the cancer pit, and the coach would be the referee to make sure they fought. Their fighting techniques. No clubs.
Right.
So they'd let them fight, and then shake hands. They'd
don't
get up
think
there, all right,
there's-
shake hands now. And so they'd fight, shake hands, and then the coach would say, okay, that's it.
I don't think they sanction fights.
I don't think they would anymore. But what's funny, Jace, is it shows you how there's classes even within classes. So we hung out in the smoking ring, but we were dippers and chewers. So we had our little section of, like, the smokeless people were over there.
Yeah.
The smokers were over there. We didn't like mix and match with each other, but we had our little section of the little dippers and chewers.
Well, then you had the dope smokers by the time I got there.
Yeah.
And, man, nobody said a word.
Is that right?
Unbelievable.
I don't remember that what going on when I was there, but I'm sure it was. Cause
Oh, it was going on.
and I was always, I mean, you ingrained in us, Dad, do your work. I mean, so I took that to heart. And so, but I went to work for.
But you're trying to find something you love to do.
Yeah.
That was my deal. I was like, I like to fish. I got up there commercial fishing. I thought, well, this is not as fun as I thought it. I mean, I love it, but
Yeah.
and I said, well, I like to cut firewood because I like fires. Nope. Yeah, it
Right.
just you think. Remember, we had the crawfish farm. Oh, we were so excited. About a year later, we were like, what were you thinking?
About 3 trips to the hospital with
Everybody going hot. It just daylight,
blood
took
poisoning.
hard, just so. Then I thought I need to take a different perspective on that.
Well, that's not the idea of work with all your, for what because you're working for the Lord. Because look, I remember Godwin had a job. He hated his job. It was swing shift, but he did it for 22 years. I mean, it was a grind, but he had to make a living. That's what he did. So I had this job at a grocery store, and but we were kids. I was 15 years old, 16, so I was just barely old enough to even. So, you took instruction. I tried to be a pretty good worker, but then you're always horsing around because everybody that I was working with was my age. So you're all, we'd cut the bottom on the egg things that had all the eggs in it. So the guy'd come in the next morning, go to move a box of eggs, and they all fell out of the bottom and broke.
Terrible.
It's awful. I'm telling you, I was, who would do that? A stupid teenager that doesn't have a good. So I was looking for a place to hide out, on my break. And so I went up on top of the ceiling, like above. I climbed up on top of where the freezers and stuff are back in the meat section. And I looked over there and I thought, oh, this is a good little place if I ever just want to get away for a few minutes. They're trying to find me. Where am I? Well, I didn't realize that when you step out on a ceiling in a grocery store, that's just a towel, ceiling towel. It won't hold your weight. And so I stepped out there. Well, I went straight through the ceiling, which was about probably a 20-foot drop, right, just sprawled out in the meat section. I landed right on the roast.
Did you get fired?
Oh, yeah. So the assistant manager who went to our church, this is why it's so embarrassing, but I'm telling an embarrassing story myself. He comes around the corner. His eyes are this big around. I'm sprawled out in the meat counter, and he looks up, and, of course, the ceiling tile is falling through. And so, first he was worried that I was hurt, but I wasn't. I was just stupid. And so, he kind of chastised me. He's the assistant manager. This is right at closing. So the next day when I came in for work, they said Jim was the manager. He said, Jim needs to see you in his office. So we had the talk, and Al just had to move on to something different. Mm-hmm. But I learned that lesson that even at a young age, even though I was dumb, but I learned. It's the only time I've ever been fired from a job. Yeah. But I needed to be fired.
Is a dangerous thing, Al.
It's gravity, right? I mean, I learned also a lesson about gravity and ceiling tiles. You don't want to step out there, Joe. So that was my lesson learned to be a good employee. And I have to say I learned it because I've worked hard the rest of my life and not tried to goof off at what I was doing.
The bottom line to me is I just think whatever you wind up doing, it should become your platform for Jesus. And I think I get that from 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for man.
Right.
That's why when we got on the duck calls, that was the perfect transition.
Yeah.
Into what we really are about.
Right.
Was Jesus.
Yeah, I think that key phrase is whatever you do it with all your heart. I mean, whether somebody's watching you or not.
So I did the unthinkable. I humbled myself and became a worker under the supervision of my younger brother for that cause. And it worked out pretty good for both of us.
It has. It's a good relationship. As a worker and a person that's being paid by someone else, I'm going to do what I said I would do. I think as an employee, that's what, if you sign a contract, you're going to work for a certain amount of time, you put everything into it. And then if the contract's over and you hate it, go do something different. Because we get a lot of questions from listeners like, my job is, these people are terrible. They're pushing all this agenda on me. You know, I hate it here. And what do I do? I mean, I get that asked several from
Well,
our
it's like you said, in this context, they would make, arrangements, at the next.
But I do think it's important to say that in a Christian context, because you need to be a person of your word. If you said, I'm in for this amount of time, then you should finish your job. Don't just walk off.
Yeah, unless there's extenuating circumstances,
right.
Which happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like in the TV Hollywood world, these contracts are all fluid.
Yeah. When using one side.
Yeah. Well, you learn that, though, it's because just things change. And so, I mean, but for the most part, you've all the spiritual qualities that take you through in the rest of your life, they take you through in that as far as character, integrity, and truth telling. But you're doing it in the name of Jesus. And if you have employees or whatever, I think it should be a Christ-centered approach.
Exactly. And you shouldn't take advantage of people. You should treat them fairly. I mean, all the things. I mean, that's clear from this text as well. That 4 verse 1. He says, "Look, you serve. Your boss is in heaven, and so that's who you serve. And so if you're going to do right by him, you're going to do right by people. I mean, you're not going to mistreat them. You're not going to be all the things we talked about."
Well, he acknowledged that he knows there's mistreatments in this when he said in 25, anyone who does wrong will be repaid for his wrong.
That's right.
And there's no favoritism. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who have dished out a lot of abuse to their employees and just in various authority situations that, the Lord will make right. I find
you recognize it all as spiritual warfare, which it is. We wrestle against the forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Be wise, chapter 4 in Colossians verse 5, be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. They're not kingdom people. Make the most of every opportunity.
Yeah.
Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. That's a pretty good challenge as far as your work ethic is concerned.
Right.
Take care of your business. You work hard. You do what's right, because everybody's watching everybody else and seeing what this thing tends to. If everybody's up to no good, it's not healthy.
Right. Well, and you can't remember, we've said all along, we talked a lot on this podcast about not keeping your religion or your Christianity or your belief system contained to a church building. So where are most of your time spent? It's in a job situation. Workplace. And so that's where you're going to display the values of Christ.
You can have a positive impact. You may catch a little flack from time to time, but don't hold it against them.
Well, but you got to remember, we've read this many times, talking about, true religion is taking care of widows and orphans. That's in James 1. 1 Timothy 5:7 says, you give the people these instructions. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. There's a responsibility to provide.
Right.
Yep.
Look, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than to watch an able-bodied person
not work.
Yeah.
Which we have a lot of, unfortunately.
Well, we do.
So we're talking about, the idea of work, and it made me think, Jase, that, Jesus taught a lot in his parables about the principle of workers and their relationship to their bosses. And
just getting along. You remember, because he did it, he talked about the family structure, and then he throws this working class situation. Because you think, where's all the strife in life? Well, it's in relationships, either the home or your work.
Yep, that's right.
Because there's authority here. And people don't like being told what to do.
That's right.
Or wrestling with authority. But I think when you put it in the context of what he's saying, ultimately we're submitted to Christ. He's been real clear in the book of Colossians. The focus is on Jesus, and we surrendered. We gave up our rights and authority to Jesus Christ. So now we find ourselves in these situations. Some people are the boss and some people are the workers, but you're still surrendered to Christ. But that's where all the conflict. I mean, you told that story about when you was I guess the lowest end employee at a grocery store.
Right, this bag boy, you know.
So our buddy, Jimbo Lindsay, well, he started off as a bag.
That's right, just like me.
Boy. Yeah.
Except he didn't sneak around and fall through the ceiling.
Well,
he actually did his job.
Well, he had some
overarching
integrity
thought
and some ambition. And 10 years later, he's running a store.
Yeah, he was the manager.
Which is why I love this country, where you can do that. But two, you get out of it what you put into it.
Right.
At some point, I mean, somebody had to say, hey, tell him, take that bag, you get fussed at, you get embarrassed, because it's all part of that process, and nobody likes being told what to do, but it's kind of part of the social working system that we have. But you can't change the rules all of a sudden and say, well, the minimum wage, that's why we have all this debate over the minimum wage and moving up, because they're like, why can't we just all make the same?
And start out making what the boss would make.
Well, because somebody is smarter, somebody worked harder, or somebody was more innovative.
Diligent.
Yeah, that's kind of the American free enterprise at work here.
That's right.
Well, he clarifies a lot of it in Colossians 3 down there. In other words, I love the way he says this. He says, don't lie to each other, since you've taken off your old self with its practices. Whether it's, no matter what it is, showing favoritism, that's out. And you put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Then he says, here, you say, here, where? What's he talking about? Once you become a member of the kingdom of God, you put your faith in Jesus, your sinful nature has been cut away. And he's saying the things you ought to take away and the things you ought to add to it. Here, there's no such thing as Greek or Jew. So ethnicity has nothing to do with this. It doesn't make any difference where you came from, where you're from, Greek or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, whether you were under the law of Moses and all of it's the Jewish people, barbarian, somebody just coming out of the nowhere, and you say, boy, what a barbarian bunch that is. Scythian, and then you
talked about what they were.
Yep. Yeah. Slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all.
That's a good point.
Your status and all of these things that divide us, ethnicity and the wrongdoing on how you treated people in the past. He said, once you reach here, the kingdom of God, that there's no difference between anybody.
I mean, you're right.
We're all loved by God. We're members of the same family, so you ought to act like it. You can't start using these old things like our culture, any culture.
Well, and you make a good point, Dad. And the story that I told about, I was a terrible employee, but even worse, I was a terrible Christian. I obviously wasn't living out my faith.
That's right.
So what happened was,
that's what he says you need to get rid of.
That's right. Because there were two girls. One of them was Susie Adams. She was Susie Sturgeon back then. That was a checker at the store, sister in Christ. Good girl. There was another one. I can't remember her name, but she was at the church. My assistant manager was a member of our church, and here I was. They hired me because they thought I was a good kid and work hard, but I wasn't, and I embarrassed them as well. I
just hear your talk, and it embarrasses me, Al.
It wasn't embarrassing. I was
caving in the ceiling and
terrible.
falling in the meat.
But here's.
I remember when that happened. I did like this. They told me about it, and I said.
That was just one of many problems in that era of my life. But here's a small world for you, Jase. You didn't know this. So I didn't know you were going to bring up Jimbo Lindsay. Different grocery store, by the way. But guess who worked in the meat department and was there the night I fell through in her meat department.
Who's it?
Minnie Lindsay, Jimbo's mom.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.